The golden age of silence. The crystal spires of new harmony stretched toward the stars like frozen lightning, their surfaces reflecting the gentle light of 3 moons that hung in the purple sky of Voltara Prime. Ambassador Zethris stood on the observation deck of the Galactic Union's central headquarters, his 4 arms folded behind his back as he gazed out at the most peaceful sight in the known universe. 200 years. 200 years of perfect peace had blessed the galaxy since the day humanity simply vanished without a trace. Zethris remembered that day clearly, though he had been just a young diplomat then. The humans had colonies on over 8,000. Worlds, bustling trade stations, and exploration vessels pushing the boundaries of known space. They were everywhere, with their loud voices, their endless questions, and their disturbing habit of turning every disagreement into a heated argument. Then, in a single day, they were gone, not destroyed, not defeated in battle, simply absent. Their cities stood empty but intact, their ships floated silently in space, and their colonies showed no signs of struggle or evacuation. It was as if every human in the galaxy had simultaneously decided to step out for a moment and never returned. The Galactic Union had been formed 3 months later. Today marked the 200th anniversary of Liberation Day, and representatives from all 12 member species had gathered to celebrate their greatest achievement, the elimination of conflict itself from galactic civilization. The vast assembly hall buzzed with the harmonious sounds of peaceful coexistence. The gaseous Nathari floated in their containment bubbles, their thoughts visible as shifting patterns of color. The towering Gorak stood like living mountains, their stone-like skin carved with ancient symbols of wisdom. The sleek Aquarians glided through specialized water channels that ran throughout the hall, while the insectoid Chittic created complex musical patterns with their wing beats. Each species was unique, each brought their own gifts to the Union, and each lived in perfect harmony with the others. There were no territorial disputes, no trade wars, no philosophical conflicts that escalated into violence. Resources were shared freely, knowledge flowed openly between worlds, and the concept of war had become so foreign that most young beings needed historians to explain what the word even meant. Ambassador Kelvana of the ethereal collective materialized. At Zethris's side, her semi-transparent form shimmering like starlight. Her species existed partially in subspace, making them ideal messengers and diplomats. "The ceremony is about to begin," she whispered, her voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "The Council is ready to present the annual peace accords." Zethris nodded, his triangular head turning toward the main stage, where a holographic display showed the current state of the galaxy. 12 colors represented the 12 species of the Union, their territories clearly marked and respected. There were no contested borders, no expansion conflicts, no colonies claimed by force. It was perfect. "Do you ever wonder what happened to them?" Kelvana asked softly, her form flickering with what might have been curiosity. "The humans, I mean. Where did they go?" Zethris had wondered about this many times over the decades. The mystery of humanity's disappearance was one of the few unsolved puzzles in their peaceful galaxy. "Perhaps they found what they were looking for," he replied. "They were always searching for something. New frontiers, new challenges, new problems to solve. Maybe they found their ultimate frontier." The ceremony began with the traditional harmony chant, performed simultaneously by all 12 species in their native languages. The sound was incredibly beautiful, a complex symphony that could never be replicated by any single species alone. This was what they had achieved without human chaos. This was perfection. High Chancellor Morvok of the Gorak took the stage, his massive form carved from living granite that had grown for 3,000 years. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of mountains and the patience of geological time. "Fellow beings of the Union," Morvok's words resonated through the hall. Today we celebrate not just the absence of conflict, but the presence of true civilization. We have built something unprecedented in galactic history, a society where every species contributes according to their gifts and receives according to their needs. Applause filled the hall in 12 different forms. The Chittic created percussion with their chitinous limbs. The Aquarians produced harmonic whale songs. And the Netherae painted celebratory patterns in the air with their gaseous forms. We have eliminated poverty, Morvac continued. The resource-rich worlds of the Gorak provide minerals to all who need them. We have eliminated hunger. The agricultural masters of the Verdani feed every mouth in the galaxy. We have eliminated disease. The bioengineers of the Simari have created cures for every known ailment. Each achievement was true and verified. The Union's shared database contained proof of their success. Crime rates had dropped to virtually zero. Mental illness had been reduced to a fraction of historical levels through community support and advanced therapy. Even natural disasters were handled efficiently through interspecies cooperation, with each species contributing their unique abilities to help others. The humans, Zethris remembered, had always struggled with these very problems. Their societies were constantly plagued by inequality, conflict, and suffering that they seemed unable to solve despite their technological advancement. Perhaps their disappearance had been a kindness to themselves as much as to the galaxy. But our greatest achievement, Morvac's voice grew deeper with pride, is that we have learned to coexist without domination. No species rules over another. No culture is forced to change to accommodate others. No voice is silenced in the name of unity. This too was true. The Union operated on consensus, with each species maintaining their own ways of life while contributing to the greater whole. Decisions were made through careful deliberation and compromise, not through the human method of arguing until the loudest voice won. As the ceremony concluded, Zethris felt the familiar satisfaction of living in utopia. The galaxy was at peace. Prosperity was universal, and every tomorrow promised to be as perfect as today. Then the alarms began to sound. The harmonious atmosphere of the assembly hall shattered as emergency klaxons echoed through the crystal spires. Red warning lights bathed the gathering in an ominous glow that no one had seen for 2 centuries. Representatives from all 12 species looked around in confusion and growing alarm. Commander Thale of the Union Deep Space Monitoring Division rushed onto the stage, his Norwegian exoskeleton clicking with agitation. His species were the galaxy's best long-range sensor operators, their compound eyes capable of processing vast amounts of data simultaneously. Chancellor Morvac, Thales. Voice carried barely controlled panic. We're detecting massive energy signatures approaching from beyond the galactic rim. The readings they're unlike anything in our databases. The main display screens throughout the hall flickered to life, showing sensor data that made no sense. Dozens of massive objects were moving toward the galaxy at speeds that should have been impossible. Each signature was enormous, larger than the biggest space stations ever built, and they radiated power levels that dwarfed entire star systems. Could it be a natural phenomenon? Asked Dr. Xylia of the Simari, her multiple tentacles writhing with nervous energy. Perhaps a previously unknown type of stellar formation? Thale's compound eyes fixed on her with grim certainty. The objects are maintaining precise formation and adjusting course to intercept our outer systems. They're artificial, and they're heading directly for us. A chill settled over the assembly that had nothing to do with temperature. For 200 years, the galaxy had known perfect peace precisely because there were no unknown factors. No external threats, no surprises. Everything had been catalogued, understood, and accounted for. Estimated time to arrival? Morvac asked, his granite features showing the first cracks of worry. At current velocity, the lead vessels will reach Our border systems in 72 hours, Thale reported. The number hit the assembly like a physical blow. 3 days. 3 days to prepare for something they didn't understand, coming from a direction they had never needed to watch, with capabilities that exceeded their comprehension. Ambassador Zethris felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Fear, not the small fears of daily life, but the deep, primal terror of the unknown that civilization was supposed to protect against. "We need to convene the Emergency Defense Council," he announced, his forearms gesturing with newfound urgency. "Every species must contribute their knowledge and capabilities. If these entities are hostile—" He didn't need to finish the sentence. No one in the assembly had military experience. The Union had defense forces, but they were primarily used for asteroid deflection and rescue operations. The last weapon designed for ship-to-ship combat had been decommissioned a century ago as an obsolete relic of barbaric times. As representatives hurried to contact their home worlds, Zethris remained on the observation deck, staring out at the peaceful stars that suddenly felt far less secure. In the distance, automated systems were already beginning to calculate defensive positions and resource allocations. But deep in his mind, a disturbing thought began to form. The timing of this threat, arriving exactly 200 years after humanity's disappearance, seemed too coincidental to ignore. And the power signatures were strangely familiar, reminiscent of readings from old human technology, but amplified beyond all recognition. The peaceful galaxy was about to discover that some silences hide more than absence. Some mysteries have answers that change everything you thought you knew about the universe. As the first emergency broadcasts went out to all Union worlds, Zethris whispered a prayer to his ancestors that they had not been celebrating the wrong victory for the past 2 centuries. The return of the evolved. The first transmission arrived 18 hours before the mysterious fleet reached Union space, and it changed everything. Ambassador Zethris was in the emergency command center when the communication came through, surrounded by the greatest minds from all 12 species as they desperately tried to formulate a defense against the approaching unknown. The center hummed with anxious activity as translators worked to decode the signal. But the moment the voice began speaking, every being in the room fell silent. The voice was speaking standard Galactic, the common language of the Union, but with an accent that hadn't been heard for 200 years. An accent that belonged to a species that no longer existed in their galaxy. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the Human Exodus Fleet, requesting permission to approach Union space. We come bearing urgent warnings in seeking reconciliation with our former galactic neighbors." The words hung in the air like an impossible revelation. Human. The voice was undeniably human, speaking with the familiar cadence and emotional inflection that had once been common throughout the galaxy. But it was impossible. Humans were gone. The galaxy had achieved peace precisely because they were no longer part of it. Chancellor Morvac's granite features shifted with confusion and something that might have been fear. "This must be some kind of deception," he rumbled. "The humans vanished 2 centuries ago. There are no records of any survivors." But Dr. Zelia of the Simari was analyzing the transmission with her advanced biological sensors, her tentacles writhing with excitement and concern. The vocal patterns, the genetic markers in the breath samples, even the quantum signature of the signal, all confirm it. "This is genuinely human, but there are anomalies." The speaker shows signs of genetic enhancement far beyond anything in our historical records. The transmission continued, and the voice that claimed to be Captain Vasquez seemed to understand their shock. "I know our return is unexpected and probably unwelcome. We've been monitoring Union communications for decades, and we understand that our disappearance brought peace to the galaxy. That was always our intention." Commander Thale's compound eyes focused intently on the incoming data streams. "The fleet is maintaining distance at the edge of our sensor range. No hostile actions detected, but the power readings are still beyond our comprehension. Zethris found his voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. Respond to the transmission. Ask them to explain themselves. The response came quickly, as if Captain Vasquez had been waiting for exactly that question. 200 years ago, the greatest human philosophers, scientists, and military leaders came to a devastating conclusion. Humanity's presence in the galaxy would inevitably lead to a catastrophic war that would destroy everything we had worked to build alongside our alien neighbors. The explanation continued, delivered in the matter-of-fact tone that humans had, always used when discussing impossible things. Our species has always been driven by conflict, growth, and expansion. These traits served us well as a young civilization, but we recognized that in a mature galactic community, they would only cause suffering. So we made the most difficult decision in human history. Ambassador Kelvana materialized beside Zethris, her ethereal form flickering with patterns that indicated deep emotional disturbance. They're saying they left voluntarily? That the disappearance was planned? We called it the silent exodus, Captain Vasquez continued. Every human in the galaxy was evacuated in a single coordinated operation that took 3 years to plan and 1 day to execute. We left our colonies intact as a gift to any species that could use them, and we departed for the void between galaxies to begin the next phase of human evolution. The implications of this revelation hit the assembly like a tidal wave. The humans hadn't been destroyed or dissolved into cosmic mystery. They had made a conscious choice to exile themselves for the good of galactic peace, and now they were back. What do you mean by evolution? Zethris asked, directing his question toward the communication array. The answer came with disturbing certainty. We spent 2 centuries transforming ourselves into something that could coexist peacefully in galactic society. We eliminated our aggressive instincts through genetic modification, enhanced our empathy through neural restructuring, and developed technology that makes war obsolete rather than more efficient. Dr. Zelia's tentacles writhed faster as more data came through her sensors. The genetic markers I'm detecting confirm massive alterations to baseline human DNA, enhanced intelligence, improved emotional regulation, increased resistance to radiation, and disease, and cellular structures that suggest lifespans measured in millennia rather than decades. But Captain Vasquez wasn't finished with her revelations. However, our return is not by choice. 3 days ago, our deep space monitoring stations detected an invasion fleet approaching this galaxy from the Andromeda Spiral. The entities controlling that fleet have already consumed 17 galaxies, turning every inhabited world into resource extraction sites. The words hit the peaceful assembly like a physical blow. Invasion, consumption. These were concepts that had been eliminated from their vocabulary, along with humanity's departure. The approaching force contains approximately 50,000 ships, each capable of sterilizing entire star systems. They call themselves the Harvesters, and they view all organic life as raw material for their expansion. Your current technology and military capabilities are insufficient to resist them. Morvac's voice carried the grinding sound of shifting stone. And you believe you can stop them? We believe we must try, came the immediate reply. Humanity spent 2 centuries preparing for this possibility. We knew that our aggressive nature, properly controlled and directed, might one day be the galaxy's only hope against a threat that couldn't be reasoned with or negotiated away. The logic was infuriating in its clarity. The very traits that had made humans unsuitable for peaceful coexistence were exactly what would be needed to face an implacable enemy. The species that had been exiled for being too warlike were returning as the galaxy's potential saviors. What are you asking of us? Zethris inquired, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Captain Vasquez's response carried the weight of inevitability. We're asking for permission to enter Union space and establish defensive positions around your most vulnerable worlds. We're asking for access to your industrial capabilities and strategic resources. And we're asking for the chance to prove that humanity has earned the right to rejoin galactic civilization. The request sparked immediate debate throughout the command center. Representatives from all 12 species began arguing in their native languages, creating a cacophony of concern, fear, and desperate hope. The ethereal collective worried about human intentions, questioning whether this might be an elaborate invasion plan. The Goric pointed out that they had no choice if the threat was real. The Aquarians advocated for careful negotiation, while the Chittic wanted to see proof of human claims before making any decisions. But it was Commander Thale who asked the most important question. How do we know you're telling the truth about this harvester fleet? The answer came in the form of data transmissions that made every sensor in the command center scream warnings. Captain Vasquez had sent them detailed scans of the approaching enemy, showing ships the size of moons, technology that bent the laws of physics, and tactical assessments that painted a picture of overwhelming doom. The lead elements of their fleet will arrive in 47 hours, Captain Vasquez reported. Whether you accept our help or not, the attack will come. The only question is whether you'll face it alone. Zethris looked around the command center at representatives of 12 species who had lived in peace for 2 centuries, who had no experience with war, no weapons designed for military conflict, and no understanding of how to fight for survival. Then he thought about humanity, the species they had been quietly grateful to see disappear, returning with evolved capabilities and the knowledge that peace sometimes required the willingness to make war. The irony was almost unbearable. The galaxy's greatest achievement, the elimination of conflict through human absence, had left them defenseless against a threat that only human nature could meet. Captain Vasquez, Zethris said, his 4 arms extended in the traditional Voltarian gesture of acceptance. On behalf of the Galactic Union, I formally request human assistance in defending our worlds. Welcome home. The response came with something that sounded suspiciously like relief. Thank you, Ambassador. Our fleet will begin deployment immediately. And Ambassador, we've missed you all more than you can imagine. As the first human ships began entering Union space for the first time in 2 centuries, their hulls gleaming with technology that seemed to bend light itself, Zethris realized that everything they thought they knew about peace, war, and civilization was about to change. The silent exodus was over. Humanity had returned, not as the chaotic force they once were, but as the evolved guardians their galaxy desperately needed. The ultimate test of whether different species could truly coexist was about to begin, and the stakes were nothing less than survival itself. In the distance, sensors detected the first signatures of the Harvester fleet, and the galaxy's 200-year vacation from conflict was officially over.